live long and prosper. It is the mystery font. You know that. Yes? Good gray array liaised. Welcome. What is this Hokum I speak of? What is Hokum? Well, this is mystery font 42 Ope Intuit. And Hokum is the fiber of lies. Hokum is hocus pocus wrought anti-focus. At the intersection of free humanity and the meaning of life, it is the mystery font 42. I'm Tim, live long and prosper. Indeed, this is the imagination of democracy. It's not the only place, but it's one. It's not quite as potent as Liberty's cranium in the Statue of Liberty. I can only imagine. But it's much like it. Somehow, this place is a nexus for voice and story and memory and history. The sigils and squiggles and stains on these walls were all contained. Were all the cliffs and the rises and the falls. The falls should be far enough so anyone can see. You cheat America once you end future presidency. We're dealing with sabotage, and it needs to be said, we're dealing with Nazi patriarchal terrorism, an occupation being led by the ethnic cleansing and attack on due process by Stephen Miller. That M is part of sabotage, privatization, mass murder, and enslavement. But it is a shape of war-level sabotage. Coalescing with part of that sabotage being, it should be clear, if you are looking and you care to see, it should be clear that Stephen Miller and Tom Homan are rupturing due process of people who are brown, to pick people up off the street and disappear them. And it is not consistent with the laws of our nation. It's not consistent with human rights, that what's happening is deeply wrong and un-American, that to rendition anyone off the street in America is really the kind of crime that you'd hear Stephen Miller or Marjorie Taylor Greene telling us that the boogeyman of their scapegoats would do. You would think that, 17-foot, speckled, horned, poison-tipped trans people or, some other strange monstrosity, like that some outlandish, mind-festooned scapegoat. Just human beings who the Klan is making scapegoats out of. That when Black Lives Matter protests happen after the vicious lynching of George Perry Floyd, that very quickly peaceful and just protests are vilified by right-wing extremists and sympathizers of Nazis. And the gaslight that Black Lives Matter, or that people who are calling, say, for land back or for the disassembly of white supremacy, to say that looting is coming from the resistance is beyond mighty rich. For sure, beyond mighty rich. Because poison wool blankets came here, my ancestors, poison wool blankets came here and assaulted and stole and murdered people. People, at some point, people who had found saviors here. Saviors who did not speak the language and taught my ancestors the language. That at some point, people who were saved and maybe nursed to health or made safe, hunted for, protected, taught, that the saviors were actually called savage, that it seems like people were, enough people were like the disgusting murderer Christopher Columbus to see and recognize endearing qualities of incredible generosity that could be universal, and to immediately see it as something that is to be exploited and destroyed, totally destroyed. Because let's look at the falsehood, the most insane picture. For decades and decades, that people on the left have been calling for things like reparations or reversal of the Heritage Foundation's 1980s or 70s push that ruptured the middle class, for things to address inequity. And when we would raise an issue, especially, say, around language. You know, asking people, show respect, please. That things like words like woke scold and political correctness come in to gaslight and throw DARVO, denial, attack, reverse victim, and offender. They throw DARVO to people asking for accountability. That Tim Pool DARVOs and ask for accountability with saying, "Oh, we're not racist. You're just trying to control me." And we stand outside of the room where the actual conversation, where we level with each other and talk about what's actually just even begin to deal with actually how do we maintain due process? Like Trump insisting that he has to have immunity to be president, the idea that Stephen Miller would say that we just can't manage due process for people, it's absolutely fucking insane. These are reality distortions. It is a reality distortion to say it's a cognitive distortion. It is a falsehood, but they're fostering distortions that these things are normal ideas. They're fostering the idea that it is normal to make due process optional because it literally has to touch everyone or nobody has it. Because all of the reasons. Not only that we hold it to be self-evident that all people are created equal and endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that we actually continue to improve upon administering that and moving boundaries that are actually artificial or actually exclude, removing things that have hampered us. Project 2025 and Project Esther, the Heritage Foundation, MAGA, this white male terrorist movement uses strategic and also massive society overarching falsehoods, huge hoaxes of reality shift. And some of it is just normalizing spewing hatred. But some of it is truly a recasting, like Stephen Miller's use of the term invasion instead of immigrant. He calls immigrants an invasion. And it is also, let's say it is a projection. The idea that human beings coming here for a better life and people who are invited, and many of them coming the right way or one of the right ways, so to speak. But in any case, all of these people endowed with inalienable rights. And there's a way to administer things well. But the projection upon immigrants as an invasion, or the truly Hitlerite language of Stephen Miller, using Mein Kampf-like language, describing people as an invasion or an infestation, or talking about poisoning blood, these kinds of uses of language, and eroding due process for some people based on that kind of antichrist hatred, horrific Nazi scapegoating language. That is how they start rupturing what can't be ruptured for anyone, for some, because then it can be taken apart from anyone. And it can't really exist if we're not sustaining it for everyone. It really can't. Due process is for everyone, and it is a reality distortion that we can't successfully administer that. It's a reality distortion that there are anywhere near. I mean, the idea, let's look at the idea of the worst of the worst. It seems to me that the worst of the worst are the people who are out in the street wearing Oakleys and hats and masks rather than white hoods anymore. Or they've moved from their white Patriot Front mask that's in the locker to a darker mask for their ICE shift. But we have empowered a white supremacist, terrorist, patriarchal terrorist lynch mob. And that is what is backing up and being impregnated with a culture of villainizing Americans who are people of color, who are of the global majority. It is criminal. The clearly racist, bigoted targeting that, just as Stephen Miller is trying to distort this idea of working to take apart white supremacy, that somehow is racist, that anti-racism is racist, or that we can stop reparations because they're being paid along racial lines, which he calls a racist or discriminatory act, as opposed to a repair of systemic, ongoing, terroristic racism. Reality distortions and exploitation of people not prepared for utter contempt and malice, sown as war-level attack, sabotage, and most definitely genocide. We are seeing ethnic cleansing. We do have to stop it, because it's not just going to rise a small amount, it's going to go absolutely bonkers, because BlackRock and others want to get into this with billions of dollars. It is a massive, massive shift of wealth to private prisons, and the legalized enslavement of people who are destitute, who are attacked by a society, villainizing and criminalizing the victims of homelessness and the victims of white supremacy. Well, the non-white male victims of white supremacy. Another new distortion, or let's say a clear swap of language that Stephen Miller is calmly using these days, especially having worked to just completely avoid the idea that they would be accountable for insurrection. He now calls protesting, such as protesting the terrorism of ICE upon our communities and literally renditioning and capturing and even murdering Americans and our guests, but mostly these are really Americans. the insanity of this. DEI is humanity, but Stephen Miller calls protesters fighting for human rights, fighting for diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. That is supposed to be bedrock. That's supposed to be assumed. It's supposed to be the most basic thing that we respect human beings. And everything about how Stephen Miller talks about people shows contempt for humanity, for the humanity of people of the global majority, contempt for people who are struggling with mental health issues, or people who are struggling with housing instability. And clearly, people who are not white, people who are brown, people who are of the global majority, Stephen Miller is showing truly vitriolic, othering contempt that is working to make people feel unsafe based on the color of their skin. He is working to create, it is terrorism. It completely, unabashedly is terrorism coming from the White House. Again, the saying goes, if you have a table of 9 people and a Nazi approaches and sits down, and no one protests or leaves, you have a table with 10 Nazis. And likewise, if Stephen Miller enters the Oval Office and no one protests or leaves, you have a Nazi White House. And indeed, Stephen Miller, he is Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy at the White House and Advisor for Homeland Security. That's incredibly, shriekingly dangerous. We need to attend to this at once. So let's keep our wits about us. And remember, Darvo, we are dealing, after all, we are dealing with Donnie Darvo. That his minions, like M, employ Darvo as well. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. Used to fend off accountability by undermining and baselessly shifting and attacking to reverse victim and offender. Remember that scoop troop? Keep it handy to slap up over the view screen, over your visor, over the windshield, or just mentally have it handy. Darvo, because sometimes it helps to have a reminder of the simple but blunt and potentially effective sabotage that can be done to our ability to perceive the falsehood or where the falsehood is using tactics upon us and flummoxing the verity. Distortions in the field of reality. We are, without doubt, we are seeing ethnic cleansing. Stephen Miller claims 1 million people have already left. He has destroyed habeas corpus for hundreds of people. He continues to torture thousands of people. And he is kidnapping people off of the street for being brown. He is torturing them. He is destroying families, ruining lives for generations potentially. A family that could be just about to have their third child and moving on to another stage of stability and participation in the American dream is recognizing Stephen Miller wants a nightmare to be virtually everyone's dream. We are under attack. We are under attack, including ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity by Stephen Miller. And meeting these crimes against humanity, this ethnic cleansing and genocide, indeed we protest. And this is where we find people exercising First Amendment rights are gaslit because protesters are not an insurrection. We see the White House, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, Pam Bondi, Trump. We see a web of lies, bringing violence through truly hateful, bigoted, Ku Klux Klan populated ICE ranks. No one bringing white supremacy into the job should be accepted into law enforcement. They should not be accepted into customs and enforcement. That's completely insane. This shows the terroristic, anti-American, truly seditious, treasonous, oath-breaking allegiance of the Trump authoritarian regime. We are in incredible danger because he is a confabulist. He is not only gaslighting, he believes that he is chosen. To some degree, he believes enough of some of his most batshit lies and beliefs that he wants to promulgate to others because he likes to believe it too. But maybe most of all, he likes to defile people. And then, after making us swallow the impossible and the irredeemable, he makes us tolerate and celebrate being defiled and used, and watch and accept or ask for it again. It is conquest. It's not winning. It's conquest. He wants to degrade people. He wants to make an agreement, and then once it's too late to go back, do something to ruin the agreement and make it a harrowing era of abuse. Oh, you thought you were selling some pianos to him? Oh, you're going to be chasing him for half of the money he owes you in court for the next 15 years. Your business will go under just trying to recover part of what you put into what you were told would be the biggest deal. Bigger than you've ever seen before. Like no one's ever seen before. But it really is more of a spell. Some of these things he's casting upon people, and like Trump derangement syndrome is really a way to cast a spell upon people, as if simply raising a question is deranged. And it is also an instruction to him, but also to his supporters, to immediately spring in a manner that is deranged upon people with the word deranged, in, intentional knife twisting troll pouncing, that someone raises a question and it's Trump derangement syndrome. But it's a strategic use of that word as Darvo. It is deployed with premeditation. And these are preemptions of secured reality. He already wants the territory that is not his. Reality distortions. Because immigrants are not an invasion, because protesters are not insurrectionists, and because ethnic cleansing is abominable and against human rights. It is against basic human rights. And we do not agree to participate in racist resculpting. We do not agree to participate in or allow brown replacement. We do not tolerate or allow creation of striation and segregation and othering. We use the facts, and that includes all of the work, to destroy fact, to destroy merit if it's not white men who did what is seemingly to be celebrated. Look at all of the incredible achievements that have been submerged or pulled off of pages or pulled out of textbooks. You like that it was white men who stepped on the moon, but the path was plotted by women of color with pencils. They made it there. It may as well have been a postage stamp, and they delivered people there and back safe. Merit? The truth is, looking at how white people, MAGA, reacted to being asked to put on a mask for people's health, we see that if there were reverse racism, if we were living in a world where it wasn't white people who had instituted massive, escalated super slavery, chattel slavery upon people, stealing over 10 million people and their communities and lives forever. If there were that thing, well, but there's not. There's not a league of races competing in some thing. Light-skinned Europeans just decided to mass produce and sanctify terrorism. And really, there is a hoax here. We don't have to leverage or allow scarcity to be leveraged against human need and vulnerability. we can build a capitalism or economy that doesn't allow us to treat people like garbage. And we should institute that. We should institute a different place where we don't allow vulnerability and need to be treated predatorily. We don't allow people elected to protect a population to decide to cull tens of thousands or millions of those people as a part of giving a present to the witch, to the witchest among us. Did we need to sacrifice thousands or millions of human lives? And where is the ceremony, or where will the first of the ceremonies be held, where people sacrifice their lives to the 565 richest families? We're dealing with people choosing apocalyptic behavior with a calm, resolute chuckle. That's the issue. We have the Ellisons sowing more damage with AI, like Elon Musk, literally poisoning a community with methane, an African American community, to make Grok into a Hitlerite Groyper nightmare. What are we going to do? And if not now, when? We need to assemble our new colossal mind and talk about how we arrest Stephen Miller. How do we make America safe from predators like the Ku Klux Klan? How do we make America safe from this neo-Nazi Ku Klux Klan occupation? Because people haven't lost sight of the fact that DEI is humanity. DEI is humanity. If you look, I think you'll find diversity, equity, inclusion, and access are and are essential to humanity. Be on the lookout for M. And if you see M, or anyone else that you think bears minion status or seems to care for the pernicious falsehood here captured briefly, strangely, in this moment, if you have a sense that you are speaking to a minion of the falsehood, or perhaps the falsehood themselves, try to track whether or not you can see potentially any sign that might lead us to the identity of the falsehood. Who could this be? People are working around the clock trying to decipher the images that we have of the falsehood slipping in to deliver a lie and slipping back out again. If only we could decipher, who is this masked man? The falsehood knows the falsehood. The falsehood knows what evil lurks in the hearts of mendacity. And the falsehood knows to obscure the truth that DEI equals humanity. DEI and A, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. These things are common sense. When you hear otherwise, you are hearing reality distortions. When you hear that a president needs immunity to be able to do terrible things in order to do good, you are hearing reality distortions. When you hear that protesters are insurrectionists for protesting, you are hearing reality distortions. And until we change it, you're hearing those reality distortions from Stephen Miller. And that should provoke continued vigilance. I mean, get a good night's sleep, take time for joy, take time to foster love. But don't lose sight of the fact that we do need to remove violent men who won't leave. And having let them in, we will need to keep ourselves apprised of our progress on removing a Nazi terrorist occupation, a Handmaid's Tale sewing, bigoted, genocidal occupation. That's what we're dealing with. Massive cuts, some of which we will not feel until potentially a different administration is in because of how they've been set to time advance. We're walking into, well, to some degree we are already in or walking into or walking through a wood chipper set up by Elon Musk and Russ Vought. How does neighborhood make us safe? How can we be league? That is a good question. Live long and prosper. How may we be league?